Incidence, written by Jungle Dragon. Chapter 1. Garnet. The sun blazed through the cracks between the curtains, and Chris couldn't feel much impetus to care. They'd been lying there for a while now, awake with closed eyes, not quite certain if they wanted to get up. They'd have to, eventually, of course, but having to do so didn't equate with wanting to do so. What do you want, then? A rush of adrenaline shot through their veins, and though they clenched their fists, they couldn't get up. Each joint was tied up, unbent, stiff as a rod. The voice spoke again. What do you want? Not sure, was what Chris would have mumbled quietly, had they been able to move their mouth. I will help you achieve your goals. It wasn't a decision the voice had made. That Chris was sure of. It was a declaration, a sharing of certain knowledge. Unbidden, they began to think more than they had in months. They asked themselves what they wanted. They asked themselves what they would need to achieve those wants. Their memories felt more like a log of events, and their emotions a list to be checked off, one at a time. I want to feel happy again. The thoughts flashed across the back of their eyelids. I want to see Azrael again. Chris knew that what they were made to think was right, but didn't really think it mattered. I want to be respected. I want to be loved. I want to be feared. I want to make choices that matter. I want power. And they were going to shout that the voice was wrong, that it was getting off track, that they weren't a bad person, but it echoed back to them with that same solid confidence. Lying to yourself will not help you achieve your goals. Stop. And so they did. Chris! It was Mom's voice they heard. The curtains were pulled, letting the full force of the sun pass through. They blinked. The sun felt warmer than usual. They did feel somewhat sweaty, however. Maybe shouldn't have slept without changing again. Chris, if you do not wake up, you will be late for school again. Come on, quickly now. I'll wait outside. Tell her you're sorry. Chris frowned. There wasn't much point to going to school when they couldn't learn anything. An apology wouldn't change that. Tell her you're sorry anyway. Sorry, Mom, they murmured. Toriel paused, adjusting to a change she wasn't quite sure she knew had happened. The sides of her eyes crinkled as she smiled gently. That's all right, Chris. We have to be quick, but you have a few minutes to get something in you first. At that, she turned and walked out with a little less nervous energy than a moment ago. Get up. Why? There wasn't much point. No one would care if they didn't show up. Get up. Change clothes. Deodorant. Snack. Leave. They felt their body begin to jitter, and they sat up suddenly. It wasn't a forced movement. If they'd resisted, they could have lied down. But if the voice was going to insist on this, Chris wasn't going to exert more energy than they had to. Their neck moved fluidly, some half-remembered neck exercises, attempting to edge out the aches they'd felt for a while now. Where Chris had stopped after a few seconds, though, now they kept it up, even as their legs jerked forward, taking even paces towards their chest of drawers. They sighed and moved along with the voice's directions willingly, if only to make it easier on themselves. Their old clothes, one they'd worn for a week or so at this point, were tossed unceremoniously to the side as they came off. The new set was nearly identical, but it did feel better in some ways. You will make your bed tomorrow. You'll clean your teeth and shower tonight.
Chris didn't think they'd have enough energy to do that. The thought made them feel sluggish.
You will.
The voice insisted this with the same calm confidence it always had, recounting a premonition instead of giving an order. Chris recalled its earlier instructions without much thought, and strode with a straighter back than normal down the stairs. They considered if they should feel scared, but the situation was almost relaxing, carried along by a lazy river where before life felt like swimming upstream. The voice began to speak, not justifying future actions, but explaining them.
You will be more extroverted. You will speak and offer commands that will be accepted without question. You will laugh and cry as appropriate. You will be kind and ruthless as the situation calls.
Chris wondered briefly if they should be worried.
You will be well-kempt and well-dressed, clean and polite. You will acquire more information and do tasks if they engender good feelings in others. You will not be stopped by death or incapacitation.
What?
You will research ways to power. You will be in a position of importance above others. You will see your brother in 1 week.
How did the voice think they were going to do any fraction of this? What was that about death and incapacitation? A reply came back promptly.
I will help you achieve your goals.
Chris was distracted from that bombshell by the stench of the Ice-Ease body spray as it lacerated their skin. The sensation was volatile in a way it hadn't been previously, like someone had turned up the smell in intensity. They didn't understand how anyone could tolerate it, even as it was seemingly used by every student in the entire school.
You will research this later.
The seriousness the voice said this with was almost comical, but Chris wasn't necessarily put off by the idea. That was a step up, they supposed. Muscle memory dragged their fingers to the cupboard, where cereal was poured into a mug, and milk from the fridge followed suit.
This will do. You'll have a proper meal tomorrow. A spill would be unsatisfactory.
Well, that explained why the cereal was in a mug instead of a bowl.
Outside.
To school.
Yes.
Well, it had to happen eventually. Their mom was waiting impatiently in the car, tapping on the steering wheel while occasionally glancing at the sun. She breathed a sigh of relief at seeing Chris's exit from the house. "Chris! Hopefully we'll make it in on time today." She smiled, even as she gestured for them to hop in. "You were quick today, thank goodness." A sniff, which was quiet for her, but still loud compared to Chris's best attempts as a human. "Is that body spray?" Her smile grew wider, and the voice held Chris's cheeks from showing their discomfort. "Well, I am certainly happy that you were able to take the time to freshen up, Chris."
Thank her.
Really? It was clear to Chris that it was damning with faint praise.
Thank her anyway.
This was going to be a running theme, Chris could tell. "Thanks, Mom." There was a faint joy in Toriel's voice that Chris only heard rarely. "That's no problem, honey." She began muttering something under her breath as the car started moving. "Nice day. Perhaps when Azrael comes back." Their chest tightened to a degree that the voice couldn't stop.
Tell her you miss him.
That
Tell her.
Chris wasn't just going to
tell her.
"I miss him," they said involuntarily. Their voice pitched as their throat fought their lips and tongue. There was quiet for a moment, and Chris knew that the voice had messed up somehow. They were embarrassed, mortified, and gripping their trouser legs in what could only be physical pain from the voice's decision. "I miss him too, honey," their mom said with a softness that made Chris reel a little mentally. Just one more week, and then you get to see him again, all right? Pity and sympathy dripped viscerally from her tone. Do you think you can hold out until then?
Lie.
Yes. Do not worry, Chris. We'll see him soon, and I will bake just the tastiest pie for us all. Their mom chuckled, and Chris fought the feeling of undeservedness that came up. Just 1 week, Chris. 1 more week. After that, the car stopped in front of the school. The pair got out, and Chris let their hands sink into the pillow-like paw of their mother's. Seconds passed, and, as was tradition, Toriel hugged them tightly for a long moment. Normally, Chris would just feel dull at this time, taking time from their mother that could be better spent doing something useful. But the voice gripped their throat tight, so that when it let go, all they could do was sink in. And a warmth, not just external, but from somewhere in their mind, flushed through them. The voice pushed images, memories to the front of Chris's head, saying goodbye to Noelle in December after an evening over with Asriel, waving to Dad after a brief visit, the sequel bait for some kids' movie that stuck in their head. And from this, Chris got the idea of what the voice wanted them to do. See you later, Mom. She let go slowly and nodded. You too, honey. She raised her hands and gestured as if pushing them away. Now shoo! Off to class you go. Miss Alphys will be glad to see you there. Chris took a deep breath in, listening as their mom's footsteps echoed down the right hallway. The voice had lightened the power behind the pressure to move, a guiding feeling rather than a forceful yanking of the tendons. Chris followed its instructions anyway, pushed naturally towards their classroom. They took comfort in the fact that, at the very least, the voice couldn't change much there, even if it tried. They placed their hand on the door and pushed.
Grab the chalk.
And that means... oh! Their teacher stuttered. Chris, you came in today.
Say good morning. Pretend to be happy to see her.
Good morning, Miss Alphys. Chris smiled, the words arriving with surprising intensity. A few students blinked, as if clearing dust from their eyes. Most didn't register this change in routine, however. Yeah! Angel's wings. Alphys looked awkward right now. That is... good morning to you too, Chris. She subtly wiped some sweat from her brow. We're doing group projects right now. Chris, you'll need a partner, so...
Show competence.
I'll see if anyone's free. Thank you, Miss Alphys. Now they were attracting attention. Some students seemed uncomfortable or bewildered. Noelle had a look of hope to Chris's confusion. Would be ashamed to let her down like usual, but ask her. Their legs were already moving, and the slight smile that the voice had plastered on their face hadn't yet left. Chris, you look a lot better today. Noelle's smile seemed genuine. I guess you want to be partners? Yeah. The voice was encouraging, feeding Chris words and phrases that they knew, but wouldn't normally have used. If I'm going to work with someone, it's best to do it with a friend, right? What? What was the voice doing? Chris had no right to call himself Noelle's friend. Birdley, from the seat just over, raised his voice. Just one problem, Chris. And there was the smirk. Noelle's already my partner, you see. And for this group project, I'd like to actually pass, I think that sounds reasonable. He paused, a mocking look of concern on his face. And, have a partner that will actually put the work in. Given Chris's behavior in the past few... Well, it'd suffice to say that Birdley was making a cogent point while also being a rat's ass about the whole situation. Chris stared him directly in the eyes.
Be unreasonably reasonable. Loudly.
That's fair, Birdley. Chris smiled, though it wasn't forced all the way to their eyes. Perhaps the voice was occasionally useful. I know I've been a little... It forced a stutter. A little off in the past. I understand if you don't expect me to turn over a new leaf so soon, but... They shook their head. No, I shouldn't impose. I guess I'll see if anyone else... No, Chris, it's okay. That was Noelle, and a consequence that Chris hadn't been expecting. We can form a group of 3. What? No, I just said... You've, decided on a group? Alphys interrupted Birdley's spluttering.
Thank them both now.
Noelle, Birdley, I really appreciate this chance. Thank you.
I didn't... Great,
Miss Alphys said, one of many, many anxieties visibly leaving her.
All right, Chris, you can take a seat, and...
A slam echoed.
Turn and say good...
Susie!
Their teacher exclaimed. The anxiety that Chris's actions had relieved were immediately replaced with another dozen or so.
We were just doing group projects, and...
She glanced around at Chris, who had just joined a group. A bullet dodged in their eyes.
Politely smile. Do not indicate approval. She is not conducive to achieving your goals.
It felt a little cold to leave their teacher out in a situation like that, but it was at least a decision that Chris approved of.
Maybe Susie could join our group as well.
Noelle spoke up. Chris had never felt more in sync with the voice than at that moment.
Noelle!
Birdley was more aneurysm than monster at this point, speaking through gritted beak.
Not the plan! Abort! Great idea, Noelle!
Alphys was almost painfully relieved.
Susie, you just, you sit over there with Noelle and Chris and Birdley.
The lizard-like creature swept her gaze across the room. At Chris, who was desperately trying to prompt the voice into doing something to resolve the situation. At Birdley, whose face was flat as it could manage on the desk. At Noelle, who... Chris was withheld by the voice from doing a double take. Was Noelle?
This will need planning.
It was an awfully ominous thing to hear, especially when prompted by the visage of Noelle seemingly blushing.
Cool,
Susie intoned, not moving from her position by the door. For a moment, silence reigned, and a physical, palpable film of awkward energy seemed to cover everything in the room. The voice was uncharacteristically silent, only using its influence to make it easier for Chris to stand straight instead of collapsing into a pile on the floor like they were very much inclined to do at the present time.
Wait a few more seconds.
Oh, so now it had a plan.
Crack a joke.
This was ridiculous. If Chris wasn't so useless, they'd have come up with something better. So, I didn't realize I was switching speaking roles with the rest of you today.
Right! The lesson!
The tension broke in a marvelous way at that, to Chris's honest surprise. It wasn't even a funny joke. Barely a joke at all.
Now, huh?
Their teacher frowned.
Where'd the chalk go? I was using it just a second before.
She looked up, nervousness returning.
Did someone take the chalk? I can't write the assignment up without it.
Chris felt it between the fingers of their right hand, safely tucked into their pocket. Great idea, voice. A mixed image impressed itself onto their head. An unpaid medic, a volunteer firefighter, a charity worker, all receiving praise and accolades. Their mouth quirked involuntarily, unsure whether this was sleazy or a somewhat amusing prank on the part of the voice. I can go to the store cupboard to look for a spare, Miss Alphys, they offered, the words flowing more easily.
Really, Chris? That'd be great, but,
She looked left and right.
Deciding a caretaker.
Take Noelle with you, okay? Just to make sure you, find it quicker.
It was pretty clear, even to Chris's less than apt social intuition, that Alphys wanted to make sure they didn't screw around and mess this up like they would have without the voice's guidance.
Okay, Miss Alphys.
Noelle looked a little disappointed as she looked back at the rest of the group, even as she kept up that joyful persona she almost always had. Susie was unbothered, and Birdley had a look of horror that Chris was tempted to call delectable.
Perfect.
Well, there were worse possible outcomes.
I suppose we should go then, Chris,
Noelle chirped. A suave nod at the gentle insistence of the voice, and the pair headed into the hallway. As the door closed, Chris let himself mentally lean back into the automatic movements of their... Well, at this point it wouldn't be too wrong to call them an aide. A butler, maybe.
It does not matter. I will help you achieve your goals in either case.
Butler it is, then.
Let her make the first move.
Hey, Chris?
I'm
glad you're feeling...
Noelle was clearly struggling for an inoffensive term. The voice didn't have to give orders now. Chris just let their mouth be eased into the right places, taking the opportunity to be in the back seat of their own life as a chance to save energy and let someone more able take their place. Better. She waved her hands as if dispelling a fog.
Not that you were bad or anything before, but...
No, it's fine. I get it. Their face held that same, not quite a smile, that they had never really bothered to use much past a certain point, but the voice seemed to enjoy. I was a little in the dumps for a while, but I shouldn't have taken that out on the people around me.
I mean...
The Servine monster almost looked embarrassed.
It wasn't that you were hurting anyone, it was more that you weren't happy?
An unreadable emotion twisted her face.
And that made me and a lot of other people unhappy?
She regained a more usual deer-in-the-headlights look.
But not in a disappointed way. They felt sorry. For you. And I'm screwing this up, aren't I?
She's lying to try and make you feel like less of a burden.
Obviously.
Play to her sympathy.
What, and lead her along? Chris thought that was a little cruel, especially to someone who had tried so hard to lift them up, even when she never had a chance of succeeding.
Trust me.
They thought that maybe they should try a different tack. Just this once.
Trust me.
But with the words came images and feelings, memories dragged up, adoration, approval, mortal terror, all tied back to an initial linking concept. A group of like-minded people, headed by a leader, a commander, a protagonist.
I will help you achieve your goals.
And in this moment of distraction, the voice gripped them tightly. Hey, Noelle, slow down a little. Their movements were jerky as the two fought for control, but Chris realized the voice was taking that into account, the internal conflict being used to present a more sympathetic facade. It's okay, Their throat caught. I know it was all me, but I'm gonna try and be better now. They shook a little. Better now, because I was being horrible before. And this is my opportunity. Opportunity to be...
Stop resisting. This is counterproductive.
Chris thought really hard about how she really didn't need to concern herself with them, and that lying about becoming a better person would only cause harm in the long run.
I am not making you lie.
Chris didn't see much evidence for that statement. and there was a lot for the converse.
I will help you achieve your goals.
Chris. Noelle's look had softened, and Chris felt a special sort of agony at the tone. Hey, Chris, you don't have to do it alone, you know? I'm here for you, and I think everyone else is too. Hope painted her features. Getting this chalk is just the first step. It's like when I, felt like I couldn't do much before, I would think of the day like a list. And when I wanted to do something, I'd write it down. But if there was no room left, that was okay. I could just save it for tomorrow's list, because I didn't want to cram the paper. She huffed and put her hands on her cheeks like blinders for a second. But that's not the point. The point is that if you ever need anything, Chris, just talk to me and I'll be listening. 'Cause that's what friends are for.
Thank her.
Chris considered how that would open up the wrong sorts of options. They considered how it would never be right to inflict themselves on Noelle like she suggested, so it was best to just let her down now. They considered how this wasn't what they wanted, especially loudly, in the hopes that the voice would listen.
Lying to yourself will not help you achieve your goals. Thank her.
They whispered it as a last form of defiance, but judging from how their companion had reacted, it only made things worse. Chris considered that they hated the voice then.
It doesn't matter. You will be satisfied in the long run.
They didn't think it was worth it. That train of thought, however, was rudely interrupted when they opened the closet doors. Was it always so dark in here? Noelle asked half-jokingly. The voice said nothing, but Chris got the impression it was as confused as they were. Maybe we should get a teacher? She suggested.
Be brave.
I can take a peek inside, Chris suggested, heart beating faster in their chest. I can't let you do that, Noelle insisted. You'd probably just jump out and scare me. She paused, narrowing her eyes. This isn't a prank, right? Chris was somewhat concerned that the voice was considering the possibility that they had planned this in advance. No, it's not. They paused.
Joint entry.
No, that's mortifying. If you're concerned, I guess we could both head in together? Chris felt their eyebrow raise suggestively. They would have flushed if it wasn't for the voice's efforts. Noelle took the bait. I guess. The first steps were tentative, one foot in front of the other on the scattered papers by the opening. The pair glanced at each other, making sure that one wasn't falling behind on accident or on purpose. Chris was desperately trying to make their arm reach for the chalk in their pocket, but the voice resisted. This room is a lot bigger than I remember, Noelle mumbled. Chris idly noted she was shivering. And it didn't have double doors. How did she remember that?
Reassure her.
It's fine. We'll just get the chalk and then we'll be good, right? Chris felt the voice try on a complex sort of look, a faux confident grin. Right. The room continued to darken.
Turn back now.
Chris was not against this idea, but Noelle beat them to the punch. I really think we should see a teacher about this, Chris. Yeah, this is something... The doors shut with a loud, echoing clang. Chris?
Noelle?
What? The floor began to shake.
Chris, what's going on?
I don't... And in between breaths, it fell from underneath them.